balance of power here on Bloomberg TV and radio. As we prepare to assemble our panel, we've got an eye on space today with news that NASA and Boeing are troubleshooting right now after some failed thrusters on the Starliner spacecraft as it was making its way to dock with the ISS. Some of these thrusters are getting back online. They're going to take another swing at this, and in about 5 minutes, we're going to bring in Ed Ludlow, who's going to walk us through this live in a very important moment here as Boeing shares hold positive, and we prepare to watch this happen together. On an important day in politics across the ocean, as President Biden spoke from the 80th anniversary of the D-Day landing, spoke from Normandy earlier today with a call after greeting veterans in a beautiful ceremony that took place earlier. A call to this global audience to preserve democracy. Here's part of his speech.
America's unique ability to bring countries together is an undeniable source of our strength and our power. Isolationism was not the answer 80 years ago and is not the answer today.
With multiple audiences as we assemble our panel now, Jeannie Sheehan Zaino is with us, Bloomberg Politics contributor, and of course, Democratic analyst, joined today by Republican strategist Chapin Fay at Actum. It's good to have you both here. Jeannie, this was a moment for Joe Biden, without mentioning the names Trump or Putin, to deliver a poignant message. He's going to speak again tomorrow, but there were some lawmakers who were there today, not including the Speaker of the House, who were somewhat responsible for slow-walking funding for Ukraine, which he talked about a lot. The cause in Ukraine, the cause against authoritarianism. Was this the right stage for that message?
It absolutely was. And can I just say I'm on pins and needles about these astronauts docking potentially 80 years after D-Day. It's very exciting and so glad you're covering it. And, you know, it was, I thought, a very moving ceremony. It was the right message. He did not mention Trump or Putin by name, although it didn't take much to figure out who he was talking about. But the message is critically important, and that is the message that isolationism makes us weak. And it is exactly juxtaposed to the message that Donald Trump campaigned on in 2016, 2020, and again now, which is this whole notion of make America great. He has made isolationism fashionable again, if you will, and attractive to voters. And it is Joe Biden's job as president to use this as a teaching moment to explain to people, most of us not around 80 years ago, why we cannot isolate from the rest of the world if we want to be strong ourselves and to save democracy. So absolutely the right message, and hopefully he's able to hit it out of the park again tomorrow as he has these two other big events.
Well, Chapin, I don't know the politics of all these veterans who were actually on the stage behind Joe Biden. The staging included many veterans in their late 90s, 100 years old, many in wheelchairs this morning listening to the president. The political nature of this speech cannot be ignored. Was it appropriate?
Listen, he's the president. He could talk about whatever he wants whenever. And like you said, I don't think you could separate the politics from that particular speech. And I think the president, you know, he's smart to be doing what he's doing for his side, right, in his campaign. Veterans and military issues usually skew more conservative or at least right of center. And it's a voting group that President Biden needs. As far as the messaging, the substance of the message, you know, I don't know that that's appropriate. And I wouldn't necessarily call it isolationism, but there were no new wars that began under President Trump, and the world was just safer under his presidency than it is now. There are various reasons for that, but Joe Biden is president, and the buck stops there. The world is less safe now than it was under President Trump. So you could call it isolationism, you could call it any number of things. But what it was that we were safer. America was safer. The world was safer. There were fewer wars under President Trump, and that's just a fact. And we can argue about why that is, but that's a fact.
Yeah, and we're not here to argue, but I would point you to Mitch McConnell's op-ed in the New York Times this morning. Pretty fascinating to see the Republican leader of the Senate, quote, "It should not take another catastrophic attack like Pearl Harbor to wake today's isolationists from the delusion that regional conflicts have no consequences for the world's most powerful and prosperous nation," unquote. Is there some wisdom to that, Chapin?
Of course. And again, I think what you're seeing is there is sort of, I wouldn't call it, civil war like the other side does, but you are seeing some tension within the Republican Party. You have the younger generation is very much aligned with what President Trump is saying about foreign policy and wars. And Senator McConnell, who I have the utmost respect for many reasons, is part of the old guard. Right, they are sort of the nation-building camp of 2 generations or a generation ago. I do respect his opinion, and of course, I think isolationism is the wrong way to describe it, and I do think isolationism is a problem. But supporting our allies, doesn't always mean getting into wars. You see the conflict between Israel and Hamas right now. I mean, Israel is our ally, and I'm not sure we're seeing like full backing of them in this particular war. So these things are very complicated. And again, under President Trump, and we can debate it, we could talk about why, what the reasons were, but under President Trump, these things didn't happen as often around the world.
Chapin Fay, it's great to have you back. Republican strategist, managing director at Actum, and of course, Jeannie Shanzano, Bloomberg Politics contributor, and also a senior democracy fellow with the Center for the Study of the Presidency and Congress. Great conversation today on Balance of Power, as always.